I'm Kimberly Kane. Thanks for joining us for Kane Insights. Our guest today is UW-Milwaukee Chancellor Mark Mone. Mark talks about the importance of higher education, personally, professionally, and for the broader community. He also walks us through why it's so important for leaders to be active listeners in order to fuel innovation. UW-Milwaukee Chancellor Mark Mone joins us as our first guest on Kane Insights. Mark, it's wonderful to have you with us. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here, Kimberly.
You are at a pivotal moment in your career and in your journey, having spent 11 years as Chancellor of UWM. I think you're the longest serving Chancellor, is that correct?
Second longest.
Second longest serving Chancellor. I would love for you to just bring it into focus. One insight that you want to make sure that everyone who's watching and listening can hone in.
Well, if I had to limit it to one insight, which is hard for me, it really is the power of education, particularly post-secondary education. It's incredible what it does for individuals, for neighborhoods, families, for our region. And a lot of times we take it for granted. And I think especially today, we're in the crosshairs of a lot of different perspectives and views. And so I think that to me is the big takeaway, the power of education, how it can bring individuals together, mobilize careers, and make such a difference for employers in so many different ways.
You know, your industry, education, is one of the industries I think that may be evolving faster than many today. I mean, clearly it's in the spotlight. It's under a tremendous amount of scrutiny as well. But I wonder if you could talk about the evolution that you have been a part of in terms of higher education that makes, what we're talking about makes education so relevant to our community.
Thanks. I'm going to break that question really into two different parts briefly. One is that while your question is premised on we're changing more rapidly than other sectors, I would argue that we actually need to change more rapidly. I would argue we're not changing actually quite fast enough. We need to be more nimble, more agile. We're not known for being really quick. We're oftentimes very reactive. And just take demographics for an example. We've known, demography, and that is the birth rates and ultimately who's coming out of high school, who's going to go to college. Just like if you're in the workforce, what is our expected labor supply? Those things are fairly well predictable. You can know that. But we've known that, but haven't necessarily taken the action. So maybe as an individual university or individual education institution we have, but across the entire sector, we haven't. So I think we're in for a lot of change. Now, as far as the evolution, I've been in this business for a while. So 36 years at UWM, was in graduate school before that. And like you have said, Chancellor for 11 years. So I've seen the industry or our sector move from in the 1950s, if you think back about post-World War II, the GI Bill and what that did, and also post-World War II, a lot of investment from the federal government around research, because we learned during World War II, this is where the best research is done. And rather than developing a think tank to develop an atom bomb, or rather than develop an independent research institution to develop vaccines, we can really collectively harness the power of universities. So in brief, the power of education to fuel a society and to strengthen regional economic development, to be a powerhouse, that is really the big, I think, impact and evolution that education has had and made. And so that's why today, when we see the curbing, if you will, the pulling back and the big questions about the value, it's puzzling to me simply because for every graduate we have in any field, CEOs and employers are saying, I need 5 more, I need 10 more, I need 100. It's like this we're producing things that are quite good. But there are some of those questions that are out there that, frankly, are unusual.
Well, and let's talk about that because, from what I'm hearing from you, talk about the innovation, the economic impact, the community impact of education. There are significant ripple effects that are created by academic institutions, yet there's a perception or a misunderstanding about the impact that universities have across communities. What do you think has led to that misperception? It's not uncommon in many industries, but what do you think has led to that misperception in academia?
So I think one is the cost of higher education and the debt load. I think that's going back really 10 and 15 years ago. We started to see that grow, and today it's where you have 1.3 to 1.5 trillion dollars in student loan debt. That's like comparable to household debt. It's like what's happened there? And why that's occurred is that we've seen, in general, states pull back a lot of their support for higher education, so tuition has rolled up. And this is true across the country. So that's one factor. I think also there is the anecdotes where some individuals will go into fields that they don't have some of the opportunities that they thought that they did. And so they'll scratch their head and say, geez, I should have majored in fill in the blank. This is an example of where it used to be college. You could graduate in a lot of different fields and you wouldn't have as much alignment with what was needed. And you still had wonderful ways to create and build careers. And that's, in my case, I was in the hotel industry and I needed to get a degree. And this was in the 1970s. What do I need the degree in? Well, you're in business. Why don't you get a degree in business? But at the same time, there were many other courses, and much like people explore degrees, a lot of things that helped me get rounded out an awful lot. But I think to the point of why we have some of those questions, you have debt and you have less than perfect alignment sometimes around what individuals can do with the degree. And I think that's why we do see more transactional approaches today. People really trying to figure out where is my degree going to have the return on investment? Where can I find that? And I think we are seeing that in a lot more cases.
What does the industry need to do to correct that misperception so it can have that global impact on communities, on individuals, on businesses that it needs to?
So first and foremost, demonstrate value. And I think how it can do that most effectively is through showcasing, telling the stories better through alumni, where the alumni have gone. So for example, at UWM, we can talk about how we graduate 5,300 students per year. 88% of those students go into the 4 fastest growing, highest demand fields around business, healthcare, science and technology, STEM-related jobs. This is that pathway. This is what's critically important for society, and also talk about technology and how innovations lead to discoveries, lead to companies, lead to growth. Stanford, Boston, Austin, Miami, these are all regions that are booming. And much of that is harnessing the power of the innovation in universities and higher education. The universities of old, I don't think, are going to be well suited to meet the needs of the future. So we're going to need to see continuing innovation in terms of how and where and when we deliver, and thinking about competencies as much as the general education requirements. I'm always going to be, as a former English and business major, I'm always going to be somebody who says there's a lot of power in humanities, social sciences, and liberal arts. That's foundational, but you need to have skills, and whether that's in data science, artificial intelligence, entrepreneurship, communications, you need to have those practical skills. I think universities will benefit a lot from moving those ways.
Mark, I've known you for quite a few years. I know your bio. I've seen your resume. I went and did some research online to take a look at your major accomplishments. I came up with 2 pages worth of major accomplishments. I had to reduce the font size to about 9 to get them all into one page. I won't read through all of them, but I would love for you to reflect on some of these major accomplishments and cubed partnerships that you have built in the community. Talk about what you're most proud of. And I'm going to ask you a second question. Talk about what you're most proud of, and talk about, from a personal perspective, what has enabled you to unleash kind of the innovation that UWM benefited from during your time as chancellor?
2 words. Proud of partnerships overall. So pride in partnerships. I guess that's not 2 words. But really partnerships and awareness, self-awareness. So on the first front, we have dramatically expanded over the last 11 years the role that UWM plays. And I said this as a platform when I came into the job, that if we define the university as the borders, the physical perimeters of the campus, our cause is lost. We are going to minimize the ability for ourselves to really make the community better. And when I say that, that might sound like, oh my goodness, that's kind of immodest. But the reality is the university, whether it's in the education school, whether it's in our 20 different healthcare majors, in the business, engineering, we can engage and enrich through the application of tools and knowledge that we have. Why would we not share that? We're a public university. So let's truly engage in meaningful partnerships. So that's one way of looking at it, but you can also look at it from the demand side. What is needed in our society? If you look at the education in K-12, why do we have today choice in charter schools? That's because the public school system historically in a lot of urban environments has not met the needs. We haven't graduated students to be ready for what every student deserves, which is a lifetime of family-sustaining, career-enriched employment opportunities. That's what education should do. So that's what led to a lot of the education partnerships, MPS working with MATC, working with UWM, to strengthen that pipeline, curricular alignment, get students ready. So I can give examples in fresh water, in technology, around data science, around artificial intelligence, around advanced manufacturing. All these things are because there are needs, and marrying the university, that's powerful, but it's not just UWM, it's bringing others together. The second part of your question about how that's been enabled and the qualities, I think that it's because we've got incredible people that when you put in front of them the vision and you talk about the why and you talk about what's needed, people get behind that. So when I called the presidents of the area technical colleges and said, we seem to have this problem that if a student wants to be an engineer, they want to be a nurse, they want to be a police officer, and they go to a 2-year college and they look at, oh my goodness, a lot of those credits, those classes don't transfer. I need to take 3 or 4 more years of college, and they give up. When I called the technical college presidents and said, what do you think about a partnership where rather than having 8, 10, 12 articulation agreements, one for each major, we just have a blanket agreement. All the credits, all classes can transfer in. Can we work through that on the academic side on both our institutions? To a person, the presidents all said instantly, yes, let's figure that out. And so in January of 2023, we had a signing, brought the technical college presidents. We're having technical colleges across the state want to participate in that. That's a breakthrough. It's revolutionary, but it's where you can work with individuals and from a basis of trust, having worked with them from a basis of collaboration and partnership, they see this is mutually beneficial. It helps students, it helps the community, helps them. Why would we not want to do that? So that to me is the key. That's the enabler. It unlocks doors. So it's about trust, relationships, and frankly, from a personal leadership impact, having gone through, I'm a strong believer in feedback and opening up our blind spots, and we all have them. Having asked a lot of my colleagues for self-awareness, how to really help and be aware of some of the obstacles that can get in the way.
And that I wanted to dig into just a little bit. I'm glad you mentioned that. I think there are so many people who are going through the journey of their own careers, right? They're looking at how they can play a role and make an impact. Doing that, having the confidence to see something that may not be in your job description, or to see something that may be different than perhaps the person you report into sees, and bring it up and build a coalition or build partnerships to go there is not easy.
Yeah.
When we talk about innovation, when we talk about the evolution of the industries, that kind of skill, I think, is more important than ever. People who see opportunities or needs and can enable an organization or an industry to go there. Where does that come from? You talked about feedback, but where does that come from?
If you're in any business today, if you're thinking about moving ahead and thinking about influence, what are you doing to show interest and learn? So those are key enablers to me. Then over time, from my industry background, when I got into graduate school, I started consulting because I'd spent some time in industry, and that led to a lot of coaching engagements. So I really looked at this and watched individuals, and then did a lot of coaching and developed a number of different feedback techniques, because what I found is that a lot of individuals, myself included, we all have blind spots. And if you're open to learning from and with others, if you ask for feedback, that's an upward spiral. If you don't, you find that and I say this as a joke, we're all spiraling. And the question is, are you spiraling upward or you're spiraling down? And if you seek feedback and you really act on it, you absolutely will spiral upward. But otherwise, you can find yourself not being aware of those blind spots and inhibiting your own development. And that can be true of leaders at any level. And so if individuals don't learn how to better communicate, certain styles might have worked at a certain level, but they get to higher levels, they're not focusing on presentation skills, if they're not engaging, using helpful social skills, that is not as positive, and can be career inhibiting. So different styles, different levels, and have a lot of fun with that. But at the same time, applying that to myself, asking for feedback anonymously from individuals, one of the most powerful tools individuals can unlock if they really want to propel in their careers, have more influence, and bring their organizations further.
And Mark, on a more personal level, how can people help students unlock the power of education?
I think two fundamental ways. One, encourage students to go to college, whether it's 2-year, 4-year, public, private. Help them find their ways. It's still a door opener that there just are a few other things that are going to rival that. It's also going to give them confidence for their life to really be able to go and take on new challenges and create the value that oftentimes individuals want to have and what employers are seeking. At the same time, I think what personally individuals can do is continue to find ways to advocate for higher education. We're going to continue to need, whether it's federal or state types of support, and that's not just true in public education. There's a lot of support that's needed for our private institutions as well. If we think about today, Pell Grants, student loans, and other things like that are critically important. A lot of students have to take on debt or get support, and so continuing to advocate for ways for our students to have that type of support. Look, let's not take for granted and close doors that were open for us when we wanted to have those educational opportunities. So let's continue to fight and support that in the future.
And that's a great insight as well.
Thanks.
Mark, thanks for being with us.
My pleasure.